Get ready because the end is near. The America we know and love is on the brink of collapse. The great American dream is crumbling before our eyes, and a frightening new chapter is about to begin. The question is, will we be ready to face what comes next? Watch this video until the end to find out.
What, buddy? What do you know, bro?
The decline of the United States is no longer just a conspiracy theory or a theme for dystopian films. It is a reality unfolding before our eyes, impacting every facet of American society. From geopolitics to military supremacy, from financial power to economic strength, to social issues, public health and the environment, the once unshakable American empire is facing large-scale erosion. This phenomenon is not just a fall. It's a precipitous drop. The debate about this inevitable decline is polarizing analysts and experts. On one side, declinists are sounding the alarm, pointing to clear signs of a collapse in progress. For them, America is sinking, losing relevance and influence with each passing day. On the other side, exceptionalists insist that the United States, with its indomitable spirit and unparalleled innovation, will continue to be the dominant force on the global stage for decades to come. But how long can this optimistic view be sustained in the face of such alarming evidence? The real test of American power comes from the East. China, which is not just challenging but actively displacing the United States in a struggle for global dominance. The once unquestioned superpower is now struggling to maintain its position in areas where it used to be unrivaled: military, culture, economics, technology, and diplomacy. Absolute dominance has become a myth of the past. According to the Asia Power Index 2020, the United States still remains ahead in aspects such as military capacity, cultural influence, resilience, and defense networks. However, China has already surpassed the US in 4 crucial parameters: economic resources, future prospects, economic relations, and diplomatic influence. These indicators suggest that the future of world power may no longer be in America's hands. American hegemony is undoubtedly under threat. The question is no longer whether the United States will fall, but how quickly it will happen, and whether there is anything that can be done to reverse this catastrophic trend. Signs and manifestations of American decline. The hegemony of the United States, long unquestioned, rested on 3 fundamental pillars: economic strength, military power, and the soft power of cultural domination, as Jeet Heyer points out. However, these pillars are now shaking, threatening to crumble under the weight of contemporary realities. The fall of American economic supremacy is an alarming sign of its imminent decline. By 1970, the US share of world production had already fallen dramatically, from an impressive 40% to just 25%. This decline continued over the decades, with renowned economist Jeffrey Sachs noting that the United States' share of world income plummeted from 24.6% in 1980 to a worrying 19.1% in 2011. These numbers reveal a continued decline that can no longer be ignored. Furthermore, income inequality has reached unsustainable levels. The ratio of CEO earnings to the wages of ordinary workers in the US has increased dramatically, from 24.1 in 1965 to an absurd 262.1 in 2005. This disparity not only reflects an increasingly divided society, but also threatens the social fabric and economic cohesion that are fundamental to the success of any nation. The forecast for the economic future of the United States paints a bleak picture. A Pew Research Center survey found that a majority of Americans believe the US economy will be weaker in 2050. Respondents see a future characterized by a growing national debt, a widening gap between rich and poor, and a work threatened by automation. These fears are not unfounded. They are a reflection of the economic reality to come, unless drastic changes are made. Some point to increased spending on social programs or the costs of the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan as the roots of the American fiscal crisis, suggesting that such spending exacerbated the decline. However, Richard Lachman offers an even more disturbing view. The real problem is not necessarily the size of spending, but rather the misallocation of government resources. He argues that a lack of proper targeting is diverting vital resources from essential tasks, weakening the United States' ability to maintain its economic and geopolitical supremacy. With these warning signs, the question that arises is whether America can, in fact, reverse this decline, or whether it is doomed to follow the path of other great powers of the past, whose fall seemed impossible until the moment it became inevitable. Competition with China, an existential challenge for the United States. The economic dominance of the United States, which once seemed unshakable, is now being sharply challenged by China. In 2014, China surpassed the US in purchasing power parity GDP, claiming the title of the world's largest economic power by this crucial metric. This milestone was not just symbolic, it was a harbinger of a tectonic shift in the global balance of power. The Economist magazine even declared that, for these reasons and more, the 21st century will be known as the Chinese century. With China now establishing itself as the world's largest manufacturer, the prediction doesn't seem far-fetched. This meteoric rise of China is shifting the global economic center from the United States to Asia, in a move that appears irreversible. While the US struggles to maintain its position, China continues to expand its economic influence aggressively and strategically. In 2020, China signed the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, forming the largest free trade bloc in the world. Time magazine warned that the United States could be the big loser from this monumental treaty, highlighting the growing risk of American economic isolation. Also in 2020, China overtook the United States in trade with the European Union, a clear sign that Beijing is dominating where Washington used to lead. The conclusion of the Comprehensive Investment Agreement between the EU and China in December of that year only further consolidated Beijing's position. Some analysts were quick to point out that this agreement could seriously damage US relations with its European allies, further weakening American global influence. As if that wasn't enough, China also overtook the US as the world leader in foreign direct investment in 2020, solidifying its status as a rising economic power and attracting global capital on an unprecedented scale. Worldwide approval of American leadership, an alarming decline. The United States' loss of prestige is not just economic, but is also reflected in the global perception of its leadership. Only 31% of people around the world approve of the United States as a world power, placing the country behind China. This is a clear sign that US influence is waning, and the country's ability to lead on global issues is seriously compromised. Against this backdrop, Germany has emerged as the world's most popular power, with an approval rating of 41%, reflecting a shift in global confidence towards American leadership. These developments are not just indicators of a growing challenge, but of an existential crisis for the United States. The competition with China is no longer just an economic dispute. It is a struggle for the heart and mind of the world, a battle for supremacy that will determine the course of the 21st century. If the US doesn't act quickly and decisively, it risks seeing its historic role as a global leader relegated to the past. Military power. The erosion of American supremacy. The military power of the United States, long considered unrivaled, is now facing an unprecedented threat. According to an alarming 98-page report by the National Defense Strategy Commission, America's long-standing military advantages have diminished, and what once seemed like absolute control has now become a frighteningly small margin for strategic error. Doubts about the US's ability to deter and, if necessary, defeat its adversaries and to honor its global commitments are multiplying rapidly. The report cites political dysfunction and budget constraints as significant barriers preventing the government from responding effectively to growing threats, describing the situation as an imminent national security crisis. As the United States struggles to maintain its status as a military superpower, rivals like China and Russia are not just watching from afar, but are actively trying to destabilize the balance of power. These countries seek to achieve regional hegemony and are engaged in aggressive military escalations to neutralize American military influence. In 2018, Air Force General Frank Gorrinch warned that the U.S. air power advantage over Russia and China was diminishing, a statement that sounds like a desperate call to action. The decline in American military power is not a recent phenomenon. According to Forbes, the decline began when Defense Secretary Dick Cheney halted 100 major weapons programs 25 years ago, shortly after the dissolution of the Soviet Union. Post-Cold War optimism and the perception of a reduced threat led to cuts that are now proving devastating in the light of new geopolitical realities. The problem is not only limited to military capacity, but also to the way the United States finances its operations. Paul Kennedy, a renowned historian, argues that continuous deficit spending, especially on military expansion, is the main reason for the decline of great powers. The astronomical costs of the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, estimated at around $4.4 trillion, represent for many a posthumous victory for Osama bin Laden, whose declared aim was to bankrupt the United States by dragging it into a financial trap. In 2011, the US military budget, which was already almost equal to that of the rest of the world combined, reached a higher level in real terms than at any time since the Second World War, a clear sign of dangerous economic overextension. The geopolitical overextension of the United States is comparable to that of the British Empire at its zenith. In 2005, the US maintained 38 large and medium-sized military installations around the world, a configuration that echoes the 36 naval bases and garrisons of the British Army at the height of its empire in 1898. Yale historian Paul Kennedy compares the US situation with that of Britain before the First World War, suggesting that the vast network of US military bases around the globe may be a sign of weakness rather than strength. Historian Emmanuel Todd argues that aggressive military expansion can create the illusion of growing power, when in fact it can mask a deep decline. He notes that both the Soviet Union in the 1970s and the Roman Empire before its fall followed this path, and warns that the United States may be going through a similar period. An expanded military presence and aggression are not necessarily signs of strength, but they may be the last spasms of a power struggling to maintain its relevance in an increasingly multipolar world. If the United States doesn't face these challenges head-on and redefine its strategic and budgetary priorities, it runs the risk of following the same path as other great powers of the past, becoming a shadow of what it once was. History is full of empires that have fallen due to their own greatness. Will the United States be next? The alarming decline of health and wellness in the United States. The American dream of a long and healthy life is turning into a nightmare of rising costs and decreasing life expectancy. According to the National Center for Biotechnology Information, health and well-being in the United States are in a worrying decline, affecting all sections of the population. Rising healthcare costs are a colossal problem that affects all Americans indiscriminately. At the turn of the millennium, the United States had become a paradox among developed nations. While per capita health costs were skyrocketing to more than double the nearest country, health indicators were not keeping pace with this investment. Worse still, overall survival was practically stagnating and in some cases even declining. This is especially true for vulnerable segments of the population, such as Native Americans and the low-income white population, who have seen their life expectancy fall year after year. This gloomy trend culminated in an absolute decline in life expectancy in the United States in 2015 and 2016, something that few could have predicted for the world's largest economy. The American College of Physicians couldn't be clearer. The US healthcare system is in decline. A critical shortage of primary care physicians, combined with costs that are rising faster than Americans can bear, is pushing the system to a breaking point. Healthcare in the United States is facing an unprecedented challenge of affordability and sustainability, warns the college, painting a bleak picture of a system that was once considered a model for the world. According to the Social Progress Index, the United States is experiencing small but steady declines in health and other social indicators, a trend that, if not reversed, could lead to a humanitarian disaster in one of the richest nations on the planet. This alarming decline has not gone unnoticed by American politicians, who now face a monumental challenge: how to reverse this tide of decline before it's too late. Discussions in Congress and state assemblies are boiling over with proposals and debates, but time is running out. Each year of inaction only increases the costs and worsens the suffering of American families, who find themselves increasingly trapped in a cycle of medical debt and deteriorating health. The United States, which for so long boasted of its economic power and innovation, now finds itself struggling to provide its citizens with something as basic as a healthy life. Unless decisive action is taken, the decline in health and well-being could become a crisis of epic proportions, threatening not only Americans' quality of life, but also the country's very future as a global leader. What once seemed impossible is now a reality. America is sick, and the time for healing is rapidly running out. Culture: the decline of the American soul. The once vibrant and innovative American culture is being seen by many as in decline, a sign of a nation that has lost its way. Influential thinkers such as Alan Bloom, E.D. Hirsch, and Russell Jacoby are sounding the alarm, warning of a cultural decay that seems irreversible. According to sociologist Jeffrey Goldfarb, the rise of postmodernism since the Second World War has contributed significantly to the decline of American culture, eroding traditional values and destabilizing national identity. William J. Bennett argues that America's cultural decline is not just a perception, but a harsh reality, signaling a shift in public attitudes and beliefs. One of the most shocking indicators of this deterioration is the maternal mortality rate, which has more than doubled in the United States since the late 1980s, contrasting sharply with other developed nations where maternal health has improved substantially. This figure not only reveals failures in health and social support systems, but also points to a deeper crisis in national values and priorities. The Index of Leading Cultural Indicators, published in 1993, paints a bleak picture of the moral, social, and behavioral conditions of modern American society. Compared to 1963, the index revealed alarming increases in several areas. Violent crime increased more than sixfold, out-of-wedlock births grew fivefold, the divorce rate increased fivefold, the percentage of children living in single-parent homes quadrupled, and the suicide rate among teenagers tripled. These figures are a disturbing reflection of a society in crisis, where social and family ties are disintegrating. Kenneth Weisbrod offers a provocative perspective by stating that the American obsession with cultural decline is nothing new. For him, America has been promoting a low culture for a long time, and this tendency is deeply rooted in national identity itself. Weisbrod compares contemporary America to pre-revolutionary France, highlighting vulgarity as an inevitable byproduct of civilization and an uncontrolled glorification of the ego. Cultural decline, in other words, is as American as apple pie, Weisbrod argues, suggesting that the pursuit of profit and the cult of celebrity have replaced the quest for virtue and excellence. Daniel Bell adds that the perception of decline is paradoxically an inherent part of American culture itself. He notes that these cultural anxieties have an existence of their own, independent of the actual geopolitical position of the United States. These concerns, according to Bell, are deeply rooted in the collective psyche of the speaking classes, who feed a narrative of decline that can be as much a reflection of economic and political realities as it is a result of deep-seated cultural insecurities. Samuel P. Huntington offers a critical analysis of the persistent tendency in American culture and politics to predict constant decline. From the Soviet Union's launch of Sputnik to the post-Cold War malaise, Americans have lived in waves of cultural anxiety, always anticipating an apocalypse that never seems to fully materialize. Huntington argues that these waves of cultural panic are in many ways a product of the specific crises of each era, but they also reflect an ongoing pattern of existential fear about America's place in the world. The future of American culture. The debate about American cultural decline is more than just an intellectual dispute. It is a battle for the soul of a nation. Whether America is indeed in decline, or whether these fears are merely reflections of a nation in constant self-assessment, one thing is clear: changing values and priorities are profoundly reshaping American society. How this cultural crisis will be resolved, and whether America can rediscover a path that will lead it back to greatness, remains an open question, but one of vital importance for the future of the country and its role in the world. As we look to the future of the United States, we are forced to confront a harsh reality. The nation that for so long led the world in economic, military, and cultural strength is now facing unprecedented challenges in every sector. American military power, once unquestioned, is being challenged by new powers. The healthcare system, which should be a pillar of strength, is on the verge of collapse, with unsustainable costs and declining life expectancy. And American culture, a beacon of innovation and progress, now faces a crisis of identity and purpose. With China rising as a new superpower and American society struggling to cope with growing inequalities and deep divisions, the question is no longer whether the United States is in decline, but how and for how long this trajectory will continue. The question we must ask is, will America be able to find a new way to redefine and revitalize itself, or are we witnessing the beginning of a new chapter in history where America ceases to be the center of global power? The challenges are enormous and the answers are unclear. Will the United States be able to overcome its internal divisions and effectively confront its external rivals? Or are we heading for a future in which American power will become just a memory of the past? And finally, what impact will this decline have on the world order? These are questions that remain unanswered, but which are echoing more and more in the hearts and minds of all those who observe America's fate. Of one thing, however, we can be certain. The world is changing, and the role of the United States in this new global scenario is yet to be defined. The future is full of uncertainties, and only time will tell whether America will be able to adapt and prosper, or whether it will fall like so many powers before it.